Yeah, because she forgot.
We're
You
live.
know.
Hi. Hi, Lou. Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Hi,
Welcome back to the shenanigans. I'm so happy to have you here. I had some people message me and say, hey, when you go live, tell me. So here you go, people. We're live. So I'm super happy to have you back. Part of the reason we decided to come back and talk again is because we've had like 2,000 views on our last conversation. So I'm really halfway discouraged and halfway pleased that we still have more things to talk about. So I think we should just get into it. So Deb, you have some updates about some other logos getting hijacked and also some good work happening. So would you talk about that for a second?
Yes. We've got, like, this morning I got an email from Native Women Running, and they were like hijacked too. Their logo was copied completely, and we're trying to get that taken down right now. But we're also like had success in getting some of the pages taken down that were selling those knockoff t-shirts. And the way that we actually did it, we wanted to pass on this to the viewers so you know what to do. You know, it's okay to share it and say don't buy this and stuff, but the one thing you want to do is make sure and report the post and report it under intellectual property, and it will get taken down.
That is so awesome.
Yes, I got all these little things from Facebook last night. It was like ding, ding, ding. And it was like all those pages, you know, quite a few pages. Ours was taken down. The one that duplicates ours was taken down, but my son had a lawyer send them a letter, you know. So like they took the whole page down that
Wow.
ours was being sold. Yeah.
That's great. So if people want to take action, they can report these things that they're seeing, and when they report them, there's an option for saying this takes someone's intellectual property. Is that right?
Yeah, it comes up on the first screen that you'll see. Awesome. And it doesn't like go to another screen and say whose intellectual property. It's just, you know, that one tap, and then make sure and press the bottom where it says send to Facebook, because it doesn't actually tell you there's one extra step before, because they try to trick you when you like report stuff in there, you know, to limit their customer service, I guess. But yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. That's so good to know. So everybody who's watching this, now you have an avenue. So if you see these nefarious companies taking product and you know it's not tied to an official indigenous organization, make sure you report it. That's really great. I'm so glad it's working. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
So one of the things that the three of us were talking about was how can we promote artisans and other indigenous folks who have businesses that are supporting MMIW. So how can people do that?
Like, you mean, how do the people support, or how do the people that are beating or, you know, selling products that are related to MMIW? Do you mean how would they fix it to where, yeah, within every money app that, you know, if you're a beater, if you sell anything that is MMIW related, you know, you always want to be given 10% back to, you know, whatever organization you choose. And there's a way in the billing of every app that you would take 10% off and send it to a different, you know, like to a MMIW organization or group. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to do. And that's what most of our people do, is like they have it built into the billing to where it actually, they don't have to like go back and mail us 10% or donate online. They don't have to do that. You just like do it. And the thing is, you want to do this. And if you're really caring about MMIW, you want to do it because we have to do our own searches 99% of the time. When you don't donate like 10%, like that, I mean, that's who you take away from is families, not us, because we, but you got to trust your organization too, that you're going to be doing the 10% too. And, but I mean, that's who you take away from is the families, not us, and like when they have to do their own searches, get their own drums, those kinds of things. It's expensive. And like, we're a pretty little organization, but we do finance a lot of searches because all of our donations go straight to the families, anything family related.
So what you're saying, Deb, is that families have to, like people who have missing relatives have to do their own searches.
Yeah, most of the time. The Lorings in Montana have done every search but one on their own, with money that was donated. And like they're at it again right now. It's Ashley Loring heavy runner search in Montana. So like they just got geared up, they're going up and coming back home at night, and if you want to actually donate your time to the search too, you can write into us, MMIW USA, or you can get a hold of one of the Lorings personally. And there's also a page for Ashley. But
so
yeah,
for white people who are watching this, if they had a relative that was missing, they could call the police and the FBI and all these places, and people would be searching for their missing person, right? Like theoretically. Lou, why do you think it's different?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why I think it's different. Some of it has to do with the way that laws are written that limit people's abilities to even who to report to. But some of the problem with that, so what I'm referring to is federal jurisdiction on tribal lands specifically, that have created this perception that indigenous women in particular are disposable and that nobody cares in the eyes of the law because they decline a good number of the cases, especially the missing cases. They don't pick up a lot of the cases federally, and that's who has the jurisdiction. And so people know they can get away with it. So it creates this really twisted ethic of we can get away with it and nobody cares, which is horrible. That behavior carries from that had started because of that way that the laws are written, carries across tribal jurisdictional lines into cities, into urban areas, into rural areas, off of tribal lands as well. And so if you're creating this behavior norm around the treatment of indigenous women, it's going to carry beyond just those jurisdictional lines. And so that's part of it. And then the other part is built around stereotypes of indigenous women as being hypersexualized or as being like, oh, she's a party girl and those kind of things, and creating this really nasty narrative around like why indigenous women might be missing. So it creates this this other ethic of not wanting to look into it because of these reasons that are based on stereotypes. So I think those are, in my eyes and things that I've looked into, those are the top two things that are contributing to these cases not being taken seriously. So, and then families are left wondering and without closure for a really long time for people that don't come back, or people are gone longer than they should be. Like they shouldn't be gone anyways, but like if somebody's gone missing, there should be people looking for them. Mm-hmm. But that's in my mind, and how I've wrap my head around it is based on those two things, is because of the stereotypes created in the way that legal jurisdictions have created this norm.
I think especially because one of the things that we talked about last week is this idea of, well, I mean, in all of these cases, it's the first 24 to 48 hours that are the most critical. But, and Deb, how have the people that you've worked with had to address some of that?
Well, the search for Ashley Loring didn't start till 9 months after she was missing.
Jeez.
And like one of the things about Ashley's case too is that, you know, like I said before, they're going doing their own searches. On the third search, Kimberly Loring found Ashley's sweater, and there was oil and something dark brown on it. Mm-hmm. She immediately took it down to Bureau of Indian Affairs, and, you know, they cataloged it, supposedly. Well, they ended up, yes, they did. But like, then like a couple of weeks later, Kimberly called and said, I was wondering what the status was on that sweater, and they couldn't find it. Mm. You know, and it didn't get found until like in November. And that was last November, and it was found after a Senate hearing on MMIW when Kimberly was talking about, you know, that incident, and the head of the BIA called there, and they had it. Mm-hmm. And now, so that's November, they've still got the sweater. There is no results for a test on that sweater.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's just one instance.
Yeah.
1,000.
So in a weird twist of fate, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the current administration has decided to address cold cases in Native communities, out of nowhere. So their targets, though, are the subject of what I want to have as a discussion here. So Lou, thank you so much for sending me a list of the states where they're focused, and then you've done this great, you and other folks have put together this really amazing map about where the actual need is in the communities, and I'd love to be able to share that in the comments or something if we can. But so the Ivanka Trump announced an Operation Lady Justice, which I have to say, for all of you watching me, made my blood boil, and I got curdly and icky. Like, it's so it's so white, like it's Operation Lady White.
I know.
Oh, like it's just, oh God, it was awful. But their focus, people, is in states Minnesota, South Dakota, Montana, Tennessee, New Mexico, Arizona, and Arkansas. But what we know is that the highest impact areas for missing and murdered Indigenous women in particular are not only 3 of those states are covered there. The highest impact areas are states like Washington and California and Nebraska and Utah and Oklahoma. So I'd love to have a conversation about what y'all are. Is there anything that could come out of this? What are you worried about? What should people know about this? And how can people hold the FBI and these cold case offices? What can they hold them accountable for? And how can we pay attention to what's happening?
One of the first things too, I mean, I wondered the same thing with the name. I was like, what in the world? When I first found out about it, I mean, it was a few months ago when I actually first seen the task force, and I was like, wait, when did this happen? This was in November that this was assembled, and like nothing has happened. And this was like, I think in May, and there was very little things done and some very limited conversations that had happened at that point. And I was like, why did they call it Lady Justice? That seems a little bit patronizing, right? But they actually named it after a painting that a Native artist did, and to me, that was sort of like a little bit what we're talking about with the t-shirt things, like ripping off things out of context. Yeah, and they may have had permission from the artist, but it's like so out of context and it's used. Maybe the person really likes it, but I don't know if they understand the message it sends, like this patronizing message by calling it Lady Justice and our Operation Lady Justice, like this is a quest or something, right? Like this is a operative, that's like a militarized term too. So I'm not really a fan of the name for a lot of reasons. And this has been going on for a long time. This isn't like brand new. So like, where was the justice before and stuff? And some people will say better late than never. And if they do something, maybe, right? But as we've been talking, I keep looking to the side because I have the map up. If we look at the map, it's like, maybe Deborah can talk about like the oddness of Tennessee having an office instead of Oklahoma, and why is there literally no offices on the entire West Coast? And so what I'm hoping is that people can put pressure on like asking those questions, like what data are you basing these offices out of? Like whose data are you using? Because there really isn't very great data out there because of the way that these cases are tracked. They're not federally. And so like, whose data are they using? And the ones that we've been using the most has been the Urban Health Institute's numbers that have through their reports looking at urban cases in particular. And the numbers just don't match where the offices are at all. So we're happy to share those graphics in the comments afterwards. Drop those in there, but I would want people to say like, why aren't you actually using data that's been published? Like you don't have to redo the data, or maybe you can expand it, but like it's already there. Yeah. Like, why don't you talk to the families? Have they reached out to any advocates? And that's the other thing that bothered me about the grant opening is like to disregard the work that's being done in Minneapolis and in Minnesota and just kind of do this celebratory thing. It's like, why are you making a celebration about something that is like so grim? It's like without even giving anybody a heads up in that area that you were going to do this. Like, did you notify families that have cases open? They probably don't even know who those families are because they don't communicate. And so they need to be communicating with all the grassroots efforts that are happening and communicating with families. And so those are the things I hope that they can change. And if they're really set on already opening these offices, which they are within the month of August, all of them are supposed to be open. I would hope that people will pressure them to open more offices into the cities where, into the states that have the prevalence of cases. So, yeah, but Deborah, do you want to talk about the Tennessee and add on the other components that I missed?
Yeah, and see, like, the reason we know what's going on in Tennessee so much is one of our reps, our advocates actually live there, you know, and in order to do work one-on-one with people, she goes to Oklahoma. So, you know, it's like in Oklahoma has so many missing. And right now we've got several cases that are going on that are having a lot of interference from different things. And, you know, we want those highlights. That would have been perfect if they would have went there. And the other gross negligent thing that I see is Washington not having one. Because Washington State, Montana and Washington go back and forth being like the one, you know, number one. Those guys are all toggling. And, you know, most of that up there, and the reason we want it up there is because of the gangs and the cartels. You know, it's like we shouldn't have to be fiddling around with cartels. No. Why doesn't they come in there and really do something? And like, that's why I get with the stinking border, you know, southern border. You're saying, you know, you're going to fortify one border. We're losing women and girls, you know, and men out over the Canadian border. That's why they practice right up above, you know, that border. They align with it. And when COVID came and the Canadian border got shut, we were down to like maybe 1-2 women a week, and we found everyone that went missing. So, you know, and that tells you something right there.
That is a really important point.
Yes.
for people to understand that
Yeah.
as soon as the borders shut, women were not missing anymore.
Right. We were so slow. We've never been slow before, but it lasted around 5 weeks. And, it's like, but it just verified what we thought was already happening. We watched the movement of trafficking in those northern states, Washington and Montana, there's more reservations there. There's more per capita in the Dakotas. But these guys, they're like here in the West are like, there's many reservations within, those two states.
Right.
But yeah, it's just.
One of the things, I have a question on the map because we're going to be posting it. There's these numbers in all the different states, Lou. What do those indicate?
So those numbers, I'll update that before we post it, are the number of cases in urban areas in those states. That's the Urban Health Institute's numbers.
Right.
And so those are the ones that are represented there. That's not counting like the tribal community data. And so, like I said, there's not a good, like, Deborah knows this too. It's like this weird thing about data ownership too, and not sharing it out happens. And that gets a little bit frustrating because it's really counterproductive to the, to what's going on. And so I know that Deborah has a good pulse on where things are because they work directly with families. And so that's like, that's who I would look to, and also to this report. And so the states that are circled have numbers in them, and those numbers indicate the cases at the time the report was written. And so I think the report's a year old now, maybe 2. And so those
it was, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it brings up a really interesting point, though, that you made earlier about this idea of indigenous women being disposable. And it makes me wonder how that filters to data and data collection, right? Because you're bringing up, we've seen this time and again with all people of color. Like the data is skewed because of how we value those people as their lives and their bodies. And I wonder if part of it is this idea that indigenous women are so invisibilized and so disposable and so far down in the list of people we think about that I wonder if that is part of the data problem.
I think it's part of it. It has to do with that, and some of it has to do with data sharing. Yeah. So like they don't share data from tribe to city and city to tribe. And so somebody could be from, like, since we've been talking about Washington, somebody could be from Yakima, but they go missing. They don't live in Yakima, they live in Seattle, and they go missing from Seattle. But that data isn't shared from Seattle to the tribe, even though that's one of their tribal members. Right. And so that data doesn't necessarily get shared that way either. And so I think that's part of it. Is just it's a mess. And that's why some of the efforts that are in place right now that I didn't see as part of the task force work, which I don't understand why, but is the data share stuff. And so that's some of the stuff like in Oregon with the House Bill 265 collection happening in other states as well, like to do that cross-jurisdictional investigation and figure out a way to share data. And I'm like, Mom, like how much technology is there? It's not that hard.
No.
Right? It's not. It really isn't. And I think it's just an excuse to continue the violence by saying that there's not a way to do it, because it's hard to imagine there's not a way to share data across jurisdictions.
So data sharing is not part of our Operation Lady Justice.
Not that I've seen so far.
Right. What else is missing? What else is missing?
Indians on the committee. There are none so far.
I was hoping you'd say it, sis. I was hoping you'd say it.
So even further, people that are like indigenous people that are doing the work too, right? Like not people that are just looking for a job, or people that are just trying to like be in something. Like, it's like, who's doing the work, and like, where are their voices in this? And I think that was, like I said earlier, the thing that bugged me the most about, well, there were several things. That was one of them in Minneapolis, is that they totally disregarded the people who are doing the work in that area and did not include them, did not invite them. And on top, so it's like you're just using people, literal bodies, as props at that point. Here's a Native person to stand with me with this giant hand, this giant key to, and like, thanks for the symbolic giant key to what? Like, what is the key to? It's not a key to the data. It's not a key to our people that are missing. It's not a key to justice at this point. It's a key to what? And then to have headdresses as props too. I'm gonna start getting
and they're sitting on the floor.
Yeah, and they were sitting down there, and it's like that symbolism of like, we have this headdress, whether or not they were given permission to use it, I have no idea whose headdresses those are. It's that symbolic of like standing above as a white woman in this position of privilege and institutional power, standing above headdresses. It looks like a kind of a conquest. It's like this continued story of conquest. And that's part of, that was one of the other things that bugged me about that, about the ribbon cutting to the office. And
it was really horrifying.
Yes.
It was a stunning display of white supremacy. It was shocking.
Jacqueline Keeler did a interview today with the women from Minnesota that got left out. So that's on Pollination. You might want to catch that after this. It's like,
we should put it in the comments, Deb.
Oh, okay, yeah. There you go. I'll put it in the comments.
Yes. So what was she saying?
Well, I was like brushing up for this. So I actually am watching it tonight too. Okay. So yeah, and but I know like okay, so we formed our own task force, or like a oversight for the task force, like oversight committee.
Mm-hmm.
And it is Lahui and Jacqueline Keeler, myself, it's Abigail Echohawk. She's the one that did the data on the Urban Indian Institute. And Emily Washeen, historian for the Yakima tribe. So, but we're gonna like start a page and then, you know, fill people in as we go. Right. You know, as this stuff, you know, an easy place to find what you're looking for. And it's like, you know, gonna be like, as this thing goes along, then that's how we'll build it, you know. Right. But like we feel that it has to be done. It needs to be done. And this is not this is not a project of MMIW USA. This is a standalone project that we're going to have people, you know, from different avenues, different, you know, different avenues. They're coming in and telling what they think. But yeah, so like catch Jacqueline's show tonight if you can, because then, you know, I really do too want to hear what those ladies who got left out of, you know, in the Minnesota. That's got to be, I did see part of a news conference they did out in a parking lot, you know, but it's like, it just goes back over what happens to our women. We're overlooked. Now, who in the world would ever start, you know, a press conference in an office without the people in that state knowing? That just shows you how quickly they came up with this. He's losing votes over the COVID and the riots, you know, and it's like he thinks he's gonna make it up with us. And
I think the thing that is really that I really want people to understand is how incredibly offensive it is to use this issue in this way without, it's so intentional not bringing in the people doing the work. Because if you brought in people doing the work, you'd actually have to do something about the issue. And it's so glaringly obvious what they're not doing. And I hope that, because I was seeing on my Twitter feed that people were like, well, maybe they're actually going to do something. Not like most people, but some people were like, maybe they're actually going to do something. And I'm like, pay attention. It's such a grab, and it's such an offensive, disgusting grab. Louie, you're laughing. I saw your smirk.
No, it's true. It's just, it's so gross. I'm like,
yes,
these are people's lives. Come on now. It's like so gross. Like why? But
it's no different than the t-shirts.
yeah, exactly.
No?
The same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it is. It's the same
It's
thing.
inappropriately using it. It's so gross. And like for me, when I looked at the overlap, that was part of some conversations too of like if there was political affiliation with the states. There definitely is.
Yeah.
In of where the cases are opening up. So like why is that counting more than where the cases are?
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
I really am glad you brought that up, because so in the majority of these states, they're majority red states. Only one of them is a blue state. And the states where there are so many issues, there's no cold case office being opened. And so it's a really, I can't wait for people to see the map, because I think they're going to really, it hammers it home so nicely about what it is we're talking about. Because again, it's not asking, it's white colonizers coming in and being like, we're going to do this, and we're not going to ask you what you need. We're just going to tell you what we're going to do, and we're going to do it. And we don't care what's been going on, and we don't want to work with you. We're going to tell you what's going to happen. And it's so destructive for these women who are missing, and for these families of these women. It's horrifying.
Well, the thing too is like, I literally do not care what political affiliation the states have. Like, I don't care. I care that I want them to be where they need to be.
Yeah.
And for it to be framed like, for that does not seem like a coincidence, because they did not use any trends. So it seems very strategic to put them in states. And this is not a political toy. Like, you can't use it to align political parties with something like this. It's too serious. And that's what I think what's bothering me about the placement of them. It's like, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, the state, like, don't use the issue of MMIW in that way where it's placing a political affiliation with this crisis. It's not, there is no political affiliation. I mean, I care what people's political parties are. People have them, but that's not the point of what I'm saying. The point is like, MMIW is being used to be a politicized issue when it's not. Like, it does not have a political affiliation at all. And so to try to align it one way is really destructive, and it dismisses like where the cases actually are. So like, pay attention to that. And I hope that people will advocate for more offices to open, because if there's none in the entire West Coast who coincidentally happen to be blue states, that also is saying something, right? Like, if you look at the numbers, the second highest number on this is Washington, and they don't have an office.
Yeah, I mean, it's the political.
Yeah, I'll say it while you're coughing. Don't punish the families. I'm like, don't punish the families and the people that are missing that need justice because it doesn't align politically with somebody, right? That's who's suffering because of that. Yeah. And so that's what, I'll quit ranting.
No, you're fine. I was just going to add, like, the politicizing Indigenous women's bodies is unacceptable. And it should be unacceptable to every single person in this country. And we have got to elevate this higher and higher in people's consciousness so they can see exactly what is happening and start standing up and saying, this is unacceptable to me. I will not be silent. And I love that you've given people these tangibles about pushing them to open more offices. I can't even believe there's no office in Washington, for heaven's sakes.
Or and I don't even know how that would, I can't even imagine what that feels like to the families.
It's terrible.
You know, and it just like, and that's one reason with this oversight committee, it's like, my thinking of it is kind of like, if we can see what's going on, then we can prepare their families, you know, in each place for this as we go, you know, hey, this is what they're doing. We're beside you. These guys just like, we'll get what we can out of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, but I just like, it really gets my heart because I know that this is going to make people feel bad, you know.
So
People that are,
is one thing that we need coordinated data? Like, would that help immensely?
Coordinated data like across everything. Yeah.
Data sharing. Like,
yeah,
if people were data sharing, would it help?
They need to actually keep track of things because they do not, like federally, like they do not. And the other thing that's happening too is one of the other points that with the task force is that they're only focusing on the tribes, which is important, but they also need to focus on like rural and urban communities as well, because not everybody lives on a tribal lands or within tribal jurisdictions. And so they're really limiting the scope of this work, and they're not inviting anybody to conversations that are not part of tribes. Right. And that is not a diminishment of the tribal nationhood or sovereignty at all. I'm just saying that it needs to be both. Because if they're only focusing on tribal lands, they're going to miss all the other cases. And that's what's been going on with some of the data stuff too, is like any small amount that is tracked is only on tribal lands federally. And they don't look at the urban numbers or rural area numbers at all. And so there's not that larger piece. And so that's why I keep reemphasizing like who's doing the work in the communities, because they have a pulse on those numbers in those communities. And
so for the women that are missing, do we even know how many of them are part of formalized tribal nations, like sovereign nations? Or, I mean, because you have unrecognized tribes as well. So how, like you just said, the only data that's being tracked is from the tribes.
Well, that's for the federal, any federal data there is will only be for rural tribes.
Okay.
And that's part of the, I think, the problem, because people, it's not, it shouldn't just be that, like, especially because of what you said, there's been terminated tribes, there's unrecognized tribes. And I'm talking about like legitimate people that are indigenous women. It shouldn't just be based on just the tribal membership to be tracked. And so like if somebody is cut off from membership because they don't meet the current enrollment criteria, they're a descendant of that tribal nation, but they don't count in those numbers anymore. And so it's kind of, that's another form of erasure with the data too. Like they wouldn't count, like I know for sure I wouldn't count in data because my tribe's not recognized federally. And so it's kind of like, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm an indigenous woman from multiple different places, right? So it's kind of like how the data is even reported is really important. I don't know, Deborah, if you have anything to say about like the exclusion of like urban places and rural areas from the data.
Yeah, it doesn't, you know, that like, what is it? 70% of all natives live off reservations. So like that's a big chunk of us. And even like the times that they misrace us and things like that, you know, that ruins the data too, you know, and then you know that they do it a lot in Oklahoma, because almost everybody there is mixed race, because they shoved us in regular society down there. They opted not to put these tribes on reservations that are Oklahoma. So that in essence takes away a lot of takes away from the numbers in Oklahoma. And I'm thinking, I wonder if that's why they didn't go there. Because there are no reservations in Oklahoma. There is like territories, which is different. Like we buy our own land.
Right.
you know, and that is, you know, some people call them res, but they're not federal. They're, you know, within the tribe. Yeah. And that maybe that's why, you know what, that is kind of upsetting. Yeah. So a chunk is getting left out if that's why they didn't go there, you know.
Yeah.
But that doesn't explain Washington because those are federal reservations.
Yeah.
So I don't know. See, there's no rhyme or reason to this stuff.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything you would like to leave people with?
Deborah put her glasses on. You got a list going, Deborah.
Yes, because last night we had a meeting with the woman that's running for mayor of Portland, and I'm so tired that I was like kept forgetting what I was saying mid-sentence. So I made sure and made notes for this. I go, uh-oh, because I've been doing like 13-hour days for about 10 days.
I think for me, just to like hold the task force accountable, if you're going to have a task force do something with it, like,
yeah,
I don't know how, like, but who to send letters to or calls or emails or whoever, but like they need to do something. This is and the thing too is this is a 2-year task force.
Oh Lord.
They're almost done with their first year.
Yeah.
It's a 2-year task force for an issue that's been going on for hundreds of years, and they have done almost nothing their entire first year until they're like, oh, we're going to open these, and now we're also holding all these info sessions all at the same time, so that way we have something to report for our first year. But like, they're not working with the people doing the work.
No.
So it's like, so yeah, I'm gonna be surprised. Whatever they produce this first year, it's gonna be what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Deb, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I actually have some good news.
Yeah.
Some good news coming out of Montana. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. For about 2.5 years, we have fought with authorities on the case of Henny and Henny Scott, and we've been working too with the oxygen channel with some stuff. It's lasted, the whole project's lasted about 2 years. But one of the things that they're gonna film in Montana, but like what we didn't, and we filled them in on all this stuff. Well, then they come back 2 weeks ago and told us, hey, guess what? We're like, what? A judge agreed to exhume the body of Henny Scott to where like there can be a proper, it's going to be an outside autopsy, because we know that Henny was hurt, and she was found along a road with bruises all over her head. There were just bumps. Her skull looked like a pomegranate, and then they said that she died from not natural causes, from exposure. Maybe she took her last breath because of exposure, but she was also hurt. But so that there was no investigation done further on that or anything, even though there was credible reports that of what happened before Henny was murdered. But so that, although it's very sad that we wouldn't have to do that, but Henny's mom and dad have been waiting all this time, and they've been so humble, and they didn't think they had the power to stand up, and say something. And that's one thing about these families that I want people to understand is that, they don't feel like they have any right to stand up for themselves. And that didn't come like in a couple of days or a couple of years. That comes from the beginning of our genocide, and so that's what we see the most. That's why we're so vocal for the families, is because it's hard for them. It's hard for them to stand up for themselves. And Henny's parents, oh gosh, they're just such nice good people, and their heart's been broken for so long. But this was a really good thing that the Oxygen Channel did finance that, and yeah, so we're just like, they're supposed to do it the end of August, and then it'll actually be on the show, but I don't know what this show's going to be called yet. There's all kinds of documentaries going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard, right? It should not be that hard to get a proper investigation. And it's just so hard because like the direct work with the families that you're doing, it's like they shouldn't have to suffer like that. And that's the part that's really bothering me too about like these offices and like the publicity stunts and stuff like that is like, and even the theft of like the art and stuff like that. And people are disregarding these families that are hurting, like you just talked about, and disrespecting the memory of their loved one in the process. And it's just, it's really messed up. And it shouldn't be.
They're like having a private investigator investigate the Selena Not Afraid case too. So, and that's one that ended where they said she wandered off and passed away. And, that the sheriff that was involved with that has been arrested for domestic violence and all this other stuff. And he was actually taken out of office, and then 5 years later he re-ran and won again, but yeah, so they're gonna do that too. But yeah, it's like I can't even tell you how many times that we've seen them say, oh, died from exposure, oh, died from this, natural causes in a 35-year-old woman. Really? It's always something. It doesn't even, we just kind of expect it anymore. It shouldn't be that way. No. And then we're working on different cases where the, like the governor of California, who's a Democrat, we can't figure out why he did this, but like he reduced the sentence by 15 years on murder, and it was violent murder, and so like we're doing that too. It's just like there's a government issue, there's the legal issues, there's personal issues. They're just like, we have learned how we go across the board, but we're doing it, but this is why we put in 10, 13-hour days is because if you got a family begging you to look into the background and do what you can to get this case overturned, to do what you can to get another autopsy and things like that, it's really hard to watch these people suffer like this. And not only are they victimized when the event happened, and they're re-victimized, through the legal system, through, it's just a constant thing. And this thing with Trump is victimizing them yet again. And it really is. Yeah. Just undo.
I can't imagine being forced to hire a private investigator because nobody will help you.
We've had to do that about 8 times.
Jesus. Well, I hope that everybody who watches this can see that there are things you can do. I think holding the task force to the fire is huge.
Yes.
Continuing to report when you see logos being hijacked by these companies and reporting them as intellectual property is huge. I think that's really, really important. And I really want to urge people who watch this, not just to share it, but also to really consider this idea about Indigenous women being disposable and how we can stop assuming that that's just how things always are going to be. And I think I just have really enjoyed this conversation, even though it's always such a hard topic to talk about. I just think the way you both raised the level of this is so tangible for people, and it really helps people see what's going on. So I hope people will continue to support the work of MMIW USA, and will continue to push. And I hope that they follow the links that we're going to give them. I'd love to give them a link to the Urban Health Institute data too. If people are interested in seeing that report, that would be really great. So
yeah, Abigail's going to be on the oversight committee. So that is perfect. You know, yeah.
Well, thank you both for your time and for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.